This conference will now be recorded.
First item on the agenda is, or I guess second item is an opportunity for public comment.
It's hard to hear you. I say it's a little hard to hear you.
Okay. You want to move closer or?
So I'm gonna go out some hearing aids and see if that will help.
Okay, not seeing anyone or hearing anybody for public comment. The third item is an action item regarding approval of meeting minutes, April 18, 2024.
And we received, Dean let us know that on here it does have, for Dr. Clevenger, it's just Rockdale's Bartlett ISD. And for himself, it should be the Bartlett Activity Center. So just to note those as changes when you're deciding to approve the minutes. So you can choose to approve with those changes.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes with the changes.
Second.
Okay, the fourth item is discussion action item.
We have to do then you vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. All in favor? Motion passed. The fourth agenda item is regarding approval of the proposed amendments to the DDCT bylaws.
Okay, so we have a few proposed amendments here. The first is adjusting the quorum requirement, and this is something we've been doing across our boards and committees for COG and KTEMPO. So we're increasing that quorum requirement. Previously, it was 1/3 of the board. We're going to increase it to 50% plus one. So currently, with 12 members on the board, it would become 7 required for quorum in the future. Additionally, we clarified how proxy board members are selected. So some language was put in there to say if a member wants to designate a proxy, all they have to do is send in a written statement or an email or something to myself or your Ryan, and let the COG know that this individual will be the proxy. So in the future, if you're unable to make it to attend the meeting, that person can attend in your place, and you could still count towards quorum. Additionally, there was a subcommittee section. We didn't change anything as far as the actual language. We did just move that section back to being just after the officers and staff section. And additionally, I think that there may be, James brought up that there's some language that we could remove from that proxy section, because it does mention something about voting being in person, which, obviously we allow people to attend their hybrid meetings, they can vote online. So we would also recommend that when these amendments are being approved, that we also remove that language in the proxy section stating that voting is in person. So yeah, it's open to the board to take a vote or to look over and suggest if there's any other changes.
I think the proposed language about proxies, I would also recommend, I think it would be rewritten to say members may designate in writing, to clarify that the designation of a proxy should be in writing rather than, right now it doesn't say, I don't think.
Yeah, it says
It just says
notify.
notify, so it designate that must be in writing.
Does the proxy, so obviously you sit here to make a form, but do they also have the right to vote?
Yeah, so members may designate in writing to SIGCOG staff a proxy to attend meetings in their place. We can also add to attend meetings in their place and vote on behalf of that member.
How many people do we have participating virtually?
How many do we have? I think at least Ginger's online.
We have 3 individuals, Ginger, Anna, and Brian O'Connor.
How many
Okay.
voting members do we have?
2, those, yeah, Brian and Ginger.
Oh, how many for quorum? Sorry.
It would be 7. So right now that'd be 6 total because 4 and then 2 online. So in the future it'll be 7 for quorum.
Okay, but right now, currently,
Yeah.
we do have quorum.
Yes, because before, right now it's still 33% because we haven't approved the changes, but for future meetings, it'll become 7. Unless we add more board members, then it becomes higher.
So the 50% plus one. Okay, so
Yeah.
we'll need more to attend to
Yes.
ensure quorum.
Yeah, and that's where the proxy part comes in.
So
too.
will that
Yeah.
be conveyed then to the members? Because,
Mhm.
I mean, I don't track, but if we're moving up, well, we're gonna need more than that. We don't wanna stop business because folks aren't attending.
Yeah. Yeah, and that'll be communicated as well as requesting that board members send in a proxy. So that way people who aren't attending can, somebody can be there in their place. We'll still be able to meet more.
So are we approving then, your suggested amendments?
As well as the language here to say that the proxy, to select a proxy has to be in writing. And then the removal of the all voting by members shall be in person in that proxy section.
You can approve them, or if you want to wait till the next meeting or look through.
Yeah, I think we should do that. Like, can we just, let's see what all the finalized amendments are and then we can approve them. Is that-
Okay, that's fine.
Or if there are members that want to create a small working group to review them, we've had other committees do that, just have a meeting virtually to kind of look through, and staff can say, hey, we're thinking of changing X, Y, Z, and like we did that for the solid waste advisory committee, and it was helpful, because some people noticed things that weren't brought up that they thought should be clarified in the bylaws, so.
Yeah.
That's
I don't know what the group thinks.
I'm good either way. If we're still making changes to this, then I would recommend we don't adopt anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
If there's still proposed changes.
All right.
And I'd leave it up to the chair if he wants to
Yeah.
pull together a small committee. I think
Sure.
So we'll go ahead and,
do you need a motion to table this item?
yeah, I guess that's.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to table.
You have a second.
I'll second.
Well, obviously, are we still taking a vote?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you have to go to.
All those in favor of tabling the motion? Okay, moving on to the next agenda item, number 5, regarding presentation on the Bosque Resource Conservation and Development Council.
Okay, so we have Joe McFarland, he's the chair of the Leon-Bosque RC&D. So he's going to provide an overview of what resource conservation development councils do, and some of the services they offer in our region. And he has a handout, so you see that he picked that up. Ron has that out as well. So Joe, take it away.
Well, thank you, glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me. There'll be 3 things here. First about me, then about RC&D, then the projects that may be of importance to counties in your area. The top page of the handout is where the RC&D program was in 2002. It stayed that way until 2011, when USDA pulled the funding. We were authorized and funded by USDA, we're in the Farm Bill. Since that time, every council to the west of I-35 went out of business. Our council is west of I-35, but we stayed in business because we had a very active board members who wrote grant proposals. So we received funding since then from TCQ, EPA 319, Texas Extension Service. So we've had projects going through that time period. The next page, the 2 councils in your area. The Leon-Bosque, obviously, we overlap with Mills and Hamilton counties. Our board member, Kayla, is Hamilton County. Our board member from Mills County is the city manager, Rob Lindsay. Central Texas is active, but not nearly as active as we are. Next, what we do. Our main program for both councils is the SCP program of TCEQ, Supplemental Environmental Projects. We are a third-party administrator for TCEQ when they levy assessments against people usually for not doing the wastewater paperwork correctly. So they fine them like $6,000. That comes to the state office, then to us. So we then work with city commissioners, city county judges, city mayors, anyone in the city, sometimes even with Main Street directors, such as Kayla, to bring that money to that community or county for an environmental project. The projects that we've done since 2020 are listed on the third page. And you'll notice that we've been very active with Hamilton County. We've had 4 projects. The biggest project was using SEP money to retrofit the city water system for a new chlorination program. We obtained $108,000 for that. The other projects have been, well, let me explain these. E-waste is electronics. Anything with a cord qualifies. We bring a vendor down from Fort Worth, put it on pallets, ship it up there, and they dispose of it. And this way we can get rid of televisions, cell phones, toaster ovens, microwaves, whatever. And the television recycling is especially important for small communities because if you contract, well, for example, Siegel, they contract with a company out of Houston, homeowners pay $35 to dispose of a TV. In this case, we just load the TVs in. But we have a limitation, only 2 TVs per customer. If they bring 3, we'll just move on from that pickup to the next pickup. So we get rid of it anyway. You notice also, back up the line, in Strong and Palapino County, we obtained $45,000 to help them purchase a new diesel school bus. Strong is really small in an area with a very limited tax base. And they had like a 1990s vintage old smoke belcher. The way the program works is, well, let me back up. We've had no new funding since January 2021 because TCEQ decided to do a full forensic audit of all of the projects. These are just our projects. These are not the statewide projects. So there's probably $1.5 to $2 million worth of projects of this scale. They did a full forensic audit of everything. And I think it's triggered by, we had 2 cases in 10 years at the state office where they hired a part-time person. We figured with all this money coming in, you won't miss $1,000 or two. Well, we did. The money was recovered, the bank paid it back, so nothing lost. But TCQ said, is this systemic rather? They did a full audit. They're still doing the audit. We're 4 years into it. The other results now, they found nothing. They found some cases of councils, 3 councils, not ours, or Central Texas, who are claiming administrative expenses, which are authorized for indirect costs. They were authorized, but they weren't written down in the budget. So I said, we'll kick these back. You got to pay $13,000. So there's $13,000 they recovered after 4 years of audits. So we expect to have a new contract in place, and I expect we'll have new funding anytime this year. Now, the way that this goes is if anyone in your city or county wants some TCQ money to clean up a project, either in old tires, electronics, or trash, and it works well because with smaller communities, we can have a trash cleanup and an electronics cleanup and tire cleanup at the same time. So everybody brings stuff in, we load trailers, and that takes care of that. So if anybody wants cleanup, call the Central Texas office and say, when you get money, let us know, because we need money for a spring cleanup to haul away old tires, clean up trash or electronics. We'll then work with someone in the city or county to organize this. Now, our office has no employees. The office is in my garage. We rely on donations. We get no money from this program. We do hire a tech expert to conduct this, and he works with the representative from the county or city. He lines up the vendors, pays the invoices, and that's it. So it works well for the city. It minimizes the paperwork. As a nonprofit, we don't have to go out for bidding for everything we do. We have vendors we've worked with for years, and we go back to them. In most cases, it's Republic who handles trash up in our area. So that's it. Questions?
Did y'all bring in dumpsters, or like you said, trailers, is it just like 2 or 3 big dumpsters?
Yes, roll off dumpsters,
Is it a
yes.
central location?
Yes,
People just they drive through and they dump their tires
yes.
in one, they dump their electronics in one, okay.
And it'll be in a secure location. Now, in Stephenville, when we have a tire cleanup, it'll be at one of the commissioner's yards. So we get a lot of tires thrown over the fence. But we don't accept batteries, paint, stuff like that. Now, since the other councils went out of business, we picked up what they had left over. So we did a full hazmat collection of household hazardous waste in Fredericksburg. We've done projects in Seminole, Van Alstyne, Electra, held a lot of tires out of Big Spring. So we serve wherever we need to go. Most of it's by telephone. So, yeah. Sir.
The Central Texas R&D Council, where we're located in Belgium, Williams, would that be who we contact?
Yes.
We contact you.
Contact persons. Now, if you have questions, you can contact me or contact Kayla and she'll answer it or refer it to me. But you go to the Central Texas for any of these counties.
Thank you. Very good.
Thank you, folks.
Yes, sir. The next item is presentation of the progress of Forge A&M-Central Texas Research Park.
Okay, Mike, did you want me to take the clip?
Yes.
Where am I pointing
You just plan towards the left.
at? Okay, beautiful. Thanks for having me out. For those of you who are not familiar with our university, and I know there are a number of people who generally are not familiar with where we are the A&M school in this area. We're an upper division school, meaning that we don't have freshmen and sophomores. We just have juniors, seniors, and graduate students. So we draw largely from Temple College, Central Texas College, ACC, and other, MCC actually as well, which is kind of interesting to me since I live in Waco. But we're really more focused on sort of getting students who have some ideas, who know what they want to do, and getting them sort of into the sort of more advanced part of their university experience. And so what that means is that we are trying to offer as much as possible opportunities for research, opportunities for internships, and things like that. And we've been fairly successful. But one of the things we're trying to do to make these services work a little bit better is to develop a university research park. And people from the university have visited a number of different research parks, and we've also worked with some different organizations and found some ideas that we think will help. So let's see. All right. So I would go over a little bit of background on the research park for those of you who, some of you may actually be familiar with that, and some of you may not be. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we're trying to integrate the research park into some of the plans we have for the university itself. And then I want to show you where on the university webpage you can get more information, because some of the slides I have, I want to apologize, they're a little bit dense, or they're not quite as sharp because I couldn't quite enlarge them enough. But this is information that's generally on our webpage. All right. So first, this is the one that's dense, and I hope that if you had a chance to look beforehand, this is just basically some background information. We've been working on the concept of a research park pretty much since about 2015, but in 2017-18, we actively started working with the City of Killeen, the Greater Killeen Chamber of Commerce, and some other organizations in our area to come up with some ideas for what we could do, what would be important, what kinds of research the research park would be involved with, and things like that. And a lot of the impetus came from Fort Cavazos, back then Fort Hood, and their needs as well. So we developed a mission and we developed a committee and we started monthly meetings. And actually the meetings right now are kind of in advance as we're making sort of the next step, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But there's a number of different agencies and they're on the list, and also this is in your packet, so if you want to look at some of the agencies we've worked with, you'll be familiar. The way we got started with the research park was to invite 2 different companies which had some kind of connections to the university to come on campus and start working with our faculty and our students. And those are Centex Technologies, based in Killeen, and Tritium, which is actually based in Alabama, but they're a Texas operation now, and it's a fairly wide operation. They do a lot on Fort Cavazos. It's actually based on our campus right now. We were able to obtain in the early 2020s a grant from OLDCC. Are people familiar with OLDCC? Office of Local Defense Community Cooperation. It's a federal agency that works with communities that have any kind of military installations and helps them to develop different kinds of economic development and other kinds of services like that. They gave us a $1.2 million grant to look at how we could develop the research park. And we hired a company called Perkins and Will, and their study is part of what I'm going to show you on our webpage in just a minute, or what's on our webpage I'm going to point out to you. And so we've developed a sort of general concept of the research park. We need to decide on some focuses, and so the focuses that were most in line with what our faculty and our students are interested in, and also what is available in this area, were defense, obviously. Alternative energies, we have a couple of faculty members who work on solar. Cybersecurity, we have some faculty members working on that. Healthcare, which is a growing both need and area of research in this area. Data sciences, which is something else that both Fort Cavazos has asked us about, and some of the local companies that we've worked with and local communities we've worked with. And then education and archives, that is what kinds of opportunities and needs there are for those. Okay, so this is our current campus. The overlay here, you can kind of see in the background some buildings and green areas and things like that. That's our original master plan from when we started in 2009. We've kind of abandoned that because the plan then was to go to a 4-year school, which we are not at this point going to do it anymore. But so this has a lot of housing, it has sports facilities and things like that. We kind of scaled some of those things back. We'll still have them, but not quite as much. So right now we have 3 buildings, and we're in the process of building a 4th. And the reason we only have 3 buildings is because of the need for the 4th. This is going to be our physical plant building, and will allow us to expand what we're putting on campus. So the new plan shows something along these lines. You can see, does this have a little, it does. You can see here the original 3 buildings, this one, and this one, are our original 3 buildings. And then these are other buildings that will be academic buildings, some housing, student services buildings, and things like that. But the buildings that are most important to talk about today for our research park are this one here and this one here, that's sort of at the top of the campus. And the plan for the campus is to have a lot of green space and then sort of 2 spines. Okay, so this building at the top is going to house administrative offices and opportunities for different kinds of companies to come and have offices there to do research. And I'll look at that one first. Again, these are a little bit hard to read, but this shows you sort of where on the campus it is, sort of shows you a general view. And actually, it's these 2 buildings together are the plan building, but this is really the first part of it, is this house here. And this is the building that will be very important in terms of bringing people into the campus, because right now we don't really have a lot of space. We've got the 2 companies on campus, but we need room to expand so we can invite more companies. We actually had a 3rd company ask, but we really don't have anywhere to put them. So this is what is planned next, and this will be the next building built on campus if we're able to do this. After our core building, unless we can get some funding, which we're hoping for the university, to build a student services and library building, which would then go, it would probably be pretty much overlapping in time. The other building is this building down here, which will be a building where we'll be able to have host events on campus. So if people want to come to campus and have some kind of event, we do that right now. We've only got really 2 large rooms. This will have a lot more space. It'll have some student services. It'll have our cafeteria. Right now, we just have a small company that we have on campus, and people have to go off campus for most of their food needs. So these 2 buildings, the Gateway Building and Forge Hall, will really kind of start us out with what we are planning for our research park. Some of the plans for the research park are tied to some things we're doing right now. So again, this is a little bit dense, but if you have your packet, you can look. We have applied for and received a number of community project funds. Are people familiar with that? It used to be called earmarks. It's congressional representatives can ask for their area, for their region, to provide some funding for things. And so we have 2 right now that we're working on, and then one that we're proposing in the future. And actually, one that we've received that's really a follow-up to some earlier research on cybersecurity. The 2 most relevant to the research part are one that relates to getting people from Fort Cavazos and from other military areas to our campus to do training for advanced statistics. This is something that a lot of military agencies need, and they end up having to go into the community or hiring people, even sometimes out of state, to do this. Fort Cavazos has hired faculty from our campus who have a lot of expertise in statistics. But we're developing some continuing courses that can be taken by anyone, anywhere, but we've got funding from the government to provide some scholarships for people from the military, especially from Operational Test Command on Fort Cavazos, to be able to train them so that they can do that work in-house and not have to rely on expensive consultants. And that's one of our first projects. And actually that's tied into another project we have where we're doing some virtual reality testing that we're going to develop some processes with Fort Cavazos for virtual reality models that can be used both for education, but also for some military testing, sort of beyond what they're currently doing. The second community project fund, which has been funded but is still in development, is to develop a building in downtown Killeen. And so this is the reason why our campus plan for the research park is slightly on hold, is that we're looking to develop an innovation district. So not just on campus, but in Killeen and also in the areas around, which would include these areas, Temple, Belton, and places like that, that would be part of an innovation district that would be tied to our research park. And this is something that we feel is very important to allow people to have spaces in their community where there can be some of this work as well. But it'll be so all connected together. And so the first part of that is we received funding from EDA to redevelop a building in downtown Killeen so that we can, for example, bring in a tech incubator, which is one of the plans that we have. We've been meeting with some companies, but we don't have everywhere on campus to put them. So we're looking to develop a building in downtown Killeen. It would also eventually serve as a place for a military transition program where people from Fort Cavazos would have offices, and we would also have offices, and companies that are looking at hiring people from the military would be able to come in, work with people, maybe provide some services to them, that is some opportunity for internships and things like that, and then eventually hire them. And that will be probably just in the downtown area, but we haven't really identified a building yet. They've looked at quite a number of them there. So these are from community project funds, but they're building toward what we're trying to do with the research fund. In addition, we're looking at commercialization partnerships, working at partnerships with other businesses in the area. We've been talking to Samsung and TEL and some other companies that are in the area about how we can get them involved in what we're trying to do and what's going on in the region. We're looking eventually at applying for an innovation planning grant. We actually had applied for one but didn't receive it. But the general comment was you don't really have the space and you don't really have a lot going on that you need to have before, so we're going to kind of put that off. And then finally, for those of you that may not be familiar with this, we've been holding summits for our research park in Killeen on our campus. We held our fourth one in January, and we're planning for our fifth one next January. I believe it's January 14th. And it's a summit in which people from the community and people from different local governments and people from different businesses can meet together and talk about what are some things that could be done at the research park and how would they like to be involved. So kind of have that on your radar if you might be interested. If you're not sure about it, or if you want to get more information, you can always feel free to email me. I'm on that Summit Planning Committee. I'm kind of talking fast. Am I going too fast, folks? No, not yet? Okay. So what we're really interested in, though, eventually is having it not just be on our campus, because that would be great to have it on our campus, but we also want to reach out to the communities around us and start to see how we can get them involved in the different things that we're looking at. So if you are familiar with people who might be interested, definitely have them get in touch with me. And again, this is not quite right now, but we're trying to get as much information as we can right now. And we're also looking for ideas. So for this next summit, we haven't developed the theme yet, but we just actually met yesterday and talked about some possibilities for themes. But in the past, we've had things, for example, related to workforce. We've had things related to healthcare. We've had things related to businesses in the area, so cybersecurity, technologies, and things like that. So we're looking for some ideas for themes. We'll have some panels. We'll have a keynote. We'll have different kinds of opportunities for breakout things. We actually might have some, one of the breakouts we were talking about was to have someone bring some technologies they're developing and have people be able to try them out and kind of learn about them. So if you're interested in finding out more information, I know you can't see these because they're dark, but if you should be able to click through from your packet to these two different sites. One of the sites is specifically about the University Research Park, which we call the Forge. And so if you click on that, it takes you to our Office of Research page and to the Forge page. And it's got several different documents and other information. The documents are that report from Perkins and Rowe about what they think are some of the best ways to develop a research park, both on campus and in the community around us. And one of the important things about that is that a lot of research parks are sort of, it's a little space where all the businesses are, and they're kind of separate from everything else. That's what the model for a lot of places is, to have a research park here, maybe the university next door or a little far away. We're trying to integrate it right onto the campus so that people are really able to do things in the area as much on campus as in the area as well. And the second is a link to our campus master plan, so that a couple of those slides I showed you, actually I think maybe just one now. I took one out. That slide that showed sort of the planned research park and other buildings on our campus, that comes from our campus master plan, which will take effect at the start of our fall semester in September, end August, beginning of September. But here's my contact information if you want to learn a little bit more, or if you want to find out more about the summit, or if you want to find out about some of the things that we're thinking about doing in our research park. And again, we're working more slowly toward that now and trying to get some more ideas, but we're still working on a lot of other things. We have a number of outreach meetings that we've had. We are slightly in transition. Our president retired last year, and then our provost had some health issues and also retired, so we're looking for a new president and a new provost who may change some of the plans and some of the sort of way that the university is moving, but some of these things are really are real long-term plans. So our campus master plan really is more the long-term plan, and we don't really expect it to vary too much from that, and also the commitment to our university research. Okay, so questions on any of that?
You said the president provost retired. Do you mean for the A&M system? Or?
No, sorry, for A&M-Central Texas. Our president was planning to retire at the end of May, but he ended up staying until the end of August, and so we have an interim president. Yeah, he's actually not interim now. He's actually our regular president, but he's not planning to stay long-term. He wants to kind of get us moving and find the right person. So he's been given by the system sort of the regular president title. And that's Dr. Rhodes, who retired from as chancellor of the ACC, Austin Community College. And we're very excited to have him because we've already had connections to ACC, but it's allowing us to expand some of our connections down to the Austin area as well.
Regarding semiconductor, I know there have been discussions about a regional training center. Is that still in the works? I know you touched on STEM a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as far as I know, so there was supposed to be recently a meeting to talk about more sort of semiconductor things. The state of Texas has created a council to oversee semiconductor development in the state and disperse some of the funding that Texas received. And if you email me, I can send you the link for that webpage because there's a lot more information on it about sort of Texas's plans for semiconductors. But, and so we do have some people who are interested, and actually, I mentioned that we had a 23, that was our 23 CPF and our 24 CPF. Part of our 25 CPF specifically is to purchase some equipment for a semiconductor lab, sort of a starting equipment for a semiconductor lab. One of our faculty has been working with the A&M System Semiconductor Institute, which has just hired their new director, their permanent director. They've had a couple of people overseeing that. But they've got a permanent person there. And so they'll also be very involved in working with the state agency that's going to be overseeing, or the state group that's going to be overseeing semiconductor development, both in the, across the state and also in different areas. But apparently there will be some pretty good opportunities for applying for funding related to semiconductors in different kinds of ways. So, but yeah, if you email me, I'll get you that link.
What are some areas of research that y'all are interested in, like, that you find yourselves interested in more often?
Well, cybersecurity, we have a cybersecurity center. So the A&M system is very stingy with their centers. You have to meet certain guidelines to be considered a center, but we were fortunate to have enough funding and also to have enough expertise for that cybersecurity center. And they're actually, they're just finishing up a grant from Air Force Research Lab and Department of Homeland Security, and moving on to a new CPF, which comes from Air Force Research Lab, to expand both hardware and software sort of models for semiconductors, models for cybersecurity. Actually, it's interesting, that same person who runs that lab is also doing some semiconductors. So I get a little confused by some of her work, but that's really one of our biggest areas. We do have some research going on related to different sort of aspects of sort of things related to cybersecurity, such as Internet of Things. That's another area where we've got some research going on. And then a lot about cybersecurity education. That's another sort of growing area. I just found out, I think it's Temple College now has cybersecurity classes available from freshman year of high school. My daughter went to Midway High School, and they had one class which was available only to seniors, and she wasn't able to get into it. She was kind of sad about that, but I think there's a lot more focus now on cybersecurity education starting earlier and getting people interested in that area.
Are y'all interested in anything like data, like types of data in, internet and health data and that kind of thing?
Like data management or data analysis, or kind of
both?
Okay, well, we do have someone who's really big in data analysis. He's the person I mentioned who was working with Port Cavazos, Russell Porter. It's one of our faculty in our marketing and management department. He's done a lot of work, and he's the one who will actually be teaching those continuing ed classes that we've gotten funding. So that CPF officially started July 2nd, so it's really brand new to us. But we've been working for about a year and a half to get that implemented. Other things that we're starting to see more interest on our campus in healthcare, our nursing faculty, and then some of the faculty in computer information systems have gotten very involved in research in healthcare data, both the protection of it, and also, if you're familiar with healthcare data, now you know that it's a lot of data. It's not just a few things. It's many variables, many individual people, and so the sort of analysis of healthcare data has become really big. And we have one faculty member who's just gotten a grant to start to develop some models for ways to look at analysis of that, and also to train people to do that. So it's so on that side of data analysis, we're kind of getting there. For data management, it's more the cybersecurity side in terms of protection. We do have pretty strong connections to the A&M System Research Security Office, which does a lot of data management protection.
Does proximity to your university, to your college, do y'all prefer to be in proximity or not in proximity, or?
In terms of working with people?
Yes.
No, it doesn't. Proximity is not as important as sort of willingness to be able to come to the campus, but also we do a lot of work online.
Okay.
So a lot of the stuff that we've done, some of the continuing ed training will be fully online. So people will just be logging into those classes. As we have a really large online program. I think right now it's close to 70% of our courses are offered online, and the majority of the ones that are not are classes you can't offer online, like lab classes and things like that. Our classes, archaeology classes, we want to take students out, and other kinds. And there are some smaller campuses, smaller classes on campus, but a large majority of our classes are taught online, so we're pretty comfortable with doing a lot of work online. Yes.
What is the approximate number, size of your current faculty, and what are the degree or educational requirements of a typical faculty member?
Okay, so I can address the second one more easily than the first. Most of our faculty have a doctoral level degree. So there are a few that are finishing up their doctoral level degree, but most of them have doctoral level degrees in their specific areas. And so they're familiar with research, they're familiar with different kinds of things. Some of them have clinical doctoral degrees as well, or specifically the degrees in a clinical doctoral area, but that allows for research, like some of the nursing faculty. We have probably full-time faculty equivalents. I think it's about 120 faculty. We have a lot of adjuncts who teach for us, some of whom are people with special knowledge. For example, we have clinical people in the community who teach some of our classes for psychology. That's my area of psychology, who teach some of our psychology classes because they have the clinical experience and knowledge to do a better job than someone whose primary focus is research. Most of our faculty are relatively young. So because we're a relatively new school, we have some faculty that have retired. We started with faculty that were kind of a lot of the middle level and have moved up, but some of them, like me, have kind of moved into administration. So we're getting a lot of younger faculty coming out of schools where they've had a lot of good research experience and they want to continue that. We've been fairly successful. I think this year we've submitted about $9 million in grants, but for some schools it's not a lot, but for a small school, that's a pretty big amount. And in terms of funding that's been received, I think we're at about $4 million for fiscal year 24. So that allows us to do a lot of, and that's spread across many different areas of research. So it allows us to do a lot of different kinds of work. So we have some areas we don't have faculty in. We really are fairly new with music, and we don't have any other fine arts. But we have a lot of the sort of more standard kinds of areas in terms of our faculty, and a lot of those do research in those areas. So.
You mentioned innovation districts. So, I mean, how exactly is that formed, and like, what are the benefits? Is there some sort of funding mechanism that comes out of the innovation district? Like, how will that work with the park?
Well, two things. So funding would certainly be part of it, because there's a number of grants you can apply to that you have to have a university partner. So part of it would be the ability to partner with the university to get some funding that can be gotten through higher education institutions that then can be used in the community. But it also would allow expertise from the university to flow out into the community. We have a applied research center, which is not center in the A&M system, but we call it a center, that does a lot of research. And I think they've done research for CIDCOG for transportation, a couple of studies, University Center for Applied Research and Engagement. So it would allow us to serve as experts for things that people might need in the area. But it would also, because we're bringing in businesses here, it would allow people to look for funding from some of those businesses. Some of those businesses would like some research done, or would like to sort of work in a community and get some plans going in that community, and they might be willing to fund that. Tritium has done some funding, I think, in the Killeen area. That's one of the ones on our campus. They've worked with some local Killeen area folks. So the innovation district is really just so that it's not all the research is focused on academics on campus. It's really more the region, businesses in the region, governments in the region, nonprofits in the region, all working together. So we call it an innovation district in the sense that it allows us to expand beyond the university research part.
Okay, that kind of dovetails with my next question, which is going to be how local governments and businesses how the research part can be applied towards benefiting them. Like, how would they work together?
So one of the things we've been trying to do is to get people from the local, we've been more successful, I think, with ISDs than sometimes with the cities and communities, although we've been successful. Copper's Cove has been very involved, obviously Killeen. Nolandale has been involved. So some of the areas right around us, we've had people come from Temple, but it's really that we're kind of reaching out and asking people to reach out also to us if they have interest, if they see something on our webpage or they find out about some things that are going on campus. that they would like to be involved in. And that's actually the main focus of those summits, is to have that knowledge available in the community. So we widely invite people in the community. We've had people come from as far as Waco to attend, to kind of get some ideas about what we're doing and how we might be involved with them.
So those ISDs be an extension of your research in their local areas and collectively add to your research, or how does that partnership work?
Well, what's happened is that the ISDs have been involved in sort of looking for some research. There's some things they wanted to know about. Our University Center for Applied History, I'm just going to call it UCARE because it's easier. It's actually worked with some of the ISDs. They've worked with Killeen ISD. They've worked with Belton ISD to do some studies. And so we're looking to kind of expand that, give them opportunities to get some research they'd like to have done, but also to contribute to research, to give us some ideas for things they think need to be done that we might not be thinking about. A lot of people in the ISDs have looked at research and have said, well, this doesn't apply in our area, or we'd like to know more about how this could apply in our area. So we've been trying to get them to attend the summit and see, and actually education is one of the options for the sort of general theme for the 5th summit. It's education and outreach of education. So that might be more related to some of the ISDs. But we've had some of the ISDs have had members on the planning committee. I think right now we have someone just from Killeen ISD on the planning committee, but we've had others. And we've had someone from CTC and Temple College who have served, and they work a lot with the local ISDs.
What about like access to data? Like y'all have access to data like most people don't have, like kind of where I'm getting at with it, like school districts I know for sure would be interested in like partnering with somebody to help research with demographic studies or growth studies or, do y'all do that kind of thing?
Yeah, we've actually done some different kinds of studies for some of the ISDs. I think primarily in terms of access to data, we don't necessarily have access to data, but we might have access to more expertise in data analysis that the local ISDs might not have. So we're working, for example, with a couple of the local communities on development of strategic plans for specific things going on in their community, and they're asking us to do some analyses that they would be paying a lot more money than the university than they would need to give to the university. Most of the time when we ask for funding for things, it's usually to pay for graduate students and for undergraduate students to work in some kind of work capacity to do some of the research. So it's usually a little bit more cost effective, but it's really more the expertise in the analysis and also just having someone to gather the data. A lot of people at ISDs are very busy. They have a lot of different things they're doing. So they don't have time to go out and look at what other ISDs are doing in the area or in different parts of the country. And so our students can do that for them. So that's a lot of what we've done with ISDs.
Can you give me an example? You kind of said it, but can you give me a specific example of a research project that you have completed for an ISD?
Okay, so for Belton, we did a research project. Belton ISD, we did a research project on bullying, and I think it started to touch a little bit on cyberbullying, but it's really more focused on bullying. It was analyzing what people thought was going on in the district, and also what were some of the ways that other districts were looking at that they were dealing with it, and what might be some of the best plans for Belton ISD in terms of implementing strategies to reduce the issues of bullying, and also to make people more aware of it and things like that. So that was one of the ones we did for Belton. For Killeen, I'm trying to think. The only one I'm familiar with for Killeen was actually looking at wages. It was a wage rate study for bus drivers and custodial staff and people like that, looking at what those were in the region and what would be a good living wage, and also what sort of some implementation for ways to look at if they wanted to raise wages, how could they work on that? So it was sort of more a survey of other areas and also survey nationally of wages. So that was not focused on students as much or on faculty in the school, teachers in the schools, but on the ISD itself, making some plans.
When you do that with your ISD, are you all primarily using your faculty to analyze that data? and our, local ISD students are not involved in that data.
We haven't had local ISD students, although actually, for a while, we were going out to some of the local ISDs and meeting with them and asking, how do they want to get their people in the ISD involved in research on campus, and would that include students? People just seem to be very busy.
Yeah.
So I think it was just a little hard for ISDs to coordinate that. But I know that there have been some discussions of some of the early college high school students getting involved in some research through the community colleges. Because community colleges don't necessarily have research on campus, although Temple has received a number of grants where they've done some different research studies. But they haven't really as much involved students. And so we would be able to facilitate some of that, in terms, at least for the students who are taking colleges through, or taking classes through the community colleges.
And is there any grant money out there for local ISDs to do renovations to older buildings and maybe turn those into research centers for the district or anything like that?
I'm not familiar with that, but if you email me, I'll try to see if I can find out and get back to you.
Okay.
So I'm technically the person in our office who helps faculty to find funding, but usually I just direct them to different sources. So except for my own research, I'm not as familiar with some of the areas of funding. So.
Would the research part be able to do things like, say, an economic impact analysis, or like there's a potential project, like a city wants to build an industrial park, and like maybe an estimate of the jobs that could be created from it, or like doing a CTE center and offering certificates to employees, businesses for like whatever technical certifications, doing like how many jobs could be created or retained from that?
Yeah, that's part of the plan for the research park, is to have places where people can find out what is available, what can be done, who are the experts in this area. One of the things we have, so we don't really have a full web page yet for the research park, since it doesn't really exist except in part with the 2 companies on our campus. But the plan is to have some sort of goals for local communities or local business, nonprofit businesses and other kinds of businesses to contact us and say, I see you can do work on this. How can I find out more about that? UCARE has done some work along those lines, although again, we're just kind of we're reconfiguring UCARE to some degree. We're trying to hire a permanent director because we've had a number of faculty members serve as directors, but then they get involved in their research and or they leave the university, and so we're trying to hire a permanent director who can kind of do more, can go out into the community more and do things like that. But so UCARE has mostly been the one doing that, but UCARE is going to be involved in the research parks.
Yeah, you mentioned the commercialization here. How exactly is the commercialization working that UCARE is doing?
Well, in terms of commercialization, it's mostly been working with people to get them into the A&M system commercialization system for our faculty on campus, but also to work with local businesses to see what kinds of things they're interested in commercializing. So eventually the plan is in that downtown building to also have an entrepreneurship center, because I can't remember if it's in this year's or next year's plan, is to have an entrepreneurship oriented degree as part of our College of Business. And so that would be something that would tie into some of that. And a lot of it for us is providing educational opportunities for people. So I'm not exactly sure, but I think that it might be something more along those lines.
Okay. And do you have kind of a timeline on when the research park will be fully realized and operational?
Not really. That's the one thing that's kind of up in the air. So we've had very, very strong support for development of the research park from the head of the A&M system, but unfortunately we found out that he will be retiring at the end of next year. So we're hoping to get someone as committed to the regional developments as Chancellor Sharp has been. So we don't think it's gonna hold us up, but it may slow down some of the things that we're planning for. So right now we've got the plan we've got the building that's being built. We have plans for 2 other buildings, and we will look for funding for those through the legislature, but through the A&M system, working with the legislature for the next round, but that's not until next year. So we're not exactly sure. It'll probably be a couple of years. In the meantime, though, this downtown building may provide us some opportunities to bring in some of those kinds of things to that building. And as soon as we have the funding in hand, that can really get started. So that might be where some of these things are done until we're able to get more buildings on campus. A lot of the buildings that will be built on campus even the academic buildings, will have some research function to them to allow faculty to even work in their building or their own labs and work with local companies, businesses, communities, and things like that. So, yes. Oh, sorry, did you have a question?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, sorry. I'll give him good information. Yes.
Has anyone approached you regarding innovative transportation research?
We haven't had anyone ask about that. We actually have, we've sort of done some work for CIDCOG, sort of transportation needs surveys. But we haven't heard anything about sort of future planning kinds of things, except for those 2 studies that we did.
When were those studies completed?
So 2012 and 17?
Yeah, the 2017 to 21 RCTP. That was, yeah, Care did that.
So and then there was an earlier one, but I think it was, that might have been.
That might have been, yeah. Yeah, it might have been.
I think it was 2012, 13, somewhere. It might have been the previous plan.
Thank you.
Okay, but yeah, that might be something, definitely email me any questions you have as well, and I can look and see what I can find out from what's on campus and from some of our partners. So I'm serving on the summit planning committees. I get to meet with a lot of people from the area and gotten to know some of them pretty well. So, okay, I think I probably take out more than my time, but so sorry, but I appreciate the questions and the interest. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, moving on to agenda item number 7. Comprehensive economic development, sorry, I didn't bring my glasses, so comprehensive economic development strategy implementation.
Okay, so we've made it to the last economic development objective in the CEDS. And if you'll remember, we started with the 4th objective because the first 3 are really focused on emergency management and resiliency and stuff. So during our workshop, we chose to kind of focus first on the economic development related ones, and then after go into the emergency preparation and management. So this objective is to strengthen CIDCOG offerings to complement municipalities' capabilities. There may not be a lot to go over for this one, really, other than some suggestions from the boards, because some of these, like conducting remote/hybrid meetings, I mean, we do that already. And the marketing materials for CIDCOG services has been pushed out as well. So I guess to start with, one of the strategies on here is building capacity to assist people with grant identification, writing administration. So as far as how this currently works is really just cities will come to us, counties will come to us with an idea for a project and will ask us for funding that goes into the technical support as needed on the next slide. So both the technical support and the grant writing and stuff, community will come to us over a project. We'll suggest some funding for them, look at different resources. If there's one they're interested in, then they may ask us for help on the actual application. Then we go into that application process, and if they're awarded, we administer it. So I guess, are there any suggestions on doing this differently or being more proactive in our approach? And if so, in what form would that take? If there are any suggestions from the board, or if we're doing fine as is, just provide any feedback you have.
I would say just being proactive is always maybe the best way to do it. I think that there are a number of communities that work with you regularly and understand the services that you can provide. But in some of our rural areas, much smaller staff, and they don't have the capacity to really engage outside of the day-to-day fires that they're trying to burn out. So how is our staff, what's the outreach process to engage with them beyond an email? Because we all get bogged down with a zillion emails, and I'm not reading half of them because it doesn't look urgent. And so how are you engaging and building relationships with the CIDCOG communities so that they know? I don't know what I don't know. So if I didn't realize you guys could assist with grants, I'm not going to call. So how are we being proactive with those communities that were not so engaged?
I think one of the things we did earlier, was the grant wish list. I think we did that 2 times, and that was by email, but we sent that out to all the cities in the region. They would basically just select what area of broadband, water, sewer, street infrastructure, and that sort of thing. What was the area of concern? And then from that, we put together, here's grants, here's loans, or technical assistance type of resources that they can use. And then ask if they wanted to apply for any of those, or, if they need our help in applying. There's also, I think this is also one of the strategies on here, is the circuit rider function, and that's something that we're working on. We're really, trying to coordinate. Ryan right now is busy over at NPR, but we'd like ideally for staff and Ryan and Jim, if possible, to go set up meetings with all the cities in the region, which we're open to feedback on how we do that. I know we had suggestions from, I think it was Janie, whenever she's still on the board, she mentioned that we could, at least with Hamilton, set up one meeting for the whole county, and maybe in Hamilton, that everyone from HICO or HICO, they can all come there, and then we set up a meeting, whatever community center, and discuss their needs, and, explain what CITCOG does and what we offer, and kind of see if any partnerships come out of that. So that's what we want to do in the future. We're open to any suggestions on how that would work.
I know we work with city governmental entities. We work with ISD government entities or just.
Yeah.
I know we do, but have we help ISDs write grants before too?
Yeah, in fact, recently that's Rockdale ISD. We applied for the EDA Public Works grant for the College and Career Academy. Their behalf. We're pretty sure we're going to get the award. That's what our EDA rep said. So yeah, we're waiting for that. That was the $5.25 million. That's
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I think the circuit rider function is good, whether they're big county meetings or whether it's just on a slow day, traveling to a smaller community and visiting with the staff, or identifying when their council meetings are, and during the public comment session, just introducing who you are and in what ways you can help.
That's a good idea.
And I know there's probably a different time for this conversation, but I would be interested in looking at grants to help ISDs bridge the gap between what the taxpayers approved and because a lot of the small rural cities don't have the infrastructure, electrical, underground utilities, above ground utilities, water pressure to sustain new or renovated facilities in a school district. I know in our school district, we're running into the issue of, we're having to buy the transformer, we're having to pay to get the overhead put in, brought into where the new facilities are. Right now we're struggling with water pressure, and so it's looking like we're not going to maybe need a water tower to get the pressure for fire hydrants or sprinkling new buildings. And so, and those are just two of the things. There's also water runoff requirements and things like that because of drainage issues in these small rural communities. And so, you've got that, the water runoff, you've got the electrical, you've got the electrical utilities, you've got all those things. And so there's there's that gap of what the city can provide and what the school districts are having to pay to bring in these, to improve, the school district and improve the town. So I'd be interested to look and see what type of grants there might be out there to bridge that gap for just the utilities, just the underground utilities.
Yeah, we could talk outside of here too, but I think the best options right now would be the EDA Public Works grant, and that one's an ongoing application. Really right now they're awarding the last of the funding. That's probably actually going to be Rockdale ISD. And then October, when the federal fiscal year starts, they'll have their new portion. The other is the one that opens in spring, and that's the Community Development Block Grant. That one, it comes through HUD, and it's a block grant that goes to the states. So it's text, CDEG. And part of that grant, these are different categories. One of them is the Community Development Fund. And that one is, again, for all types of public infrastructure. So we set priorities for projects in our region. So priorities the COG selected were street infrastructure, water, sewer, I think, residential house rehabilitation, and then fire stations and equipment, and then a few others I think are top priorities, meaning that the application comes through that has a project in one of those categories, they'll get the full 50 points for that scoring, and then the rest is scoring by the state.
Yeah, because we're pretty much held to
Yeah.
the county's fire marshal's authority, and, you know, a water pressure can stop construction like that, and you're not gonna get building occupancy, right, you know, any of that stuff, and so it can halt all kinds of projects, and so, and I thought the EDA Public Works grant was primarily for the city government.
Yes.
So a school district wouldn't be able to apply for the EDA Public Works grant, that would have to be partnered. School, city working together with the CITCOG to get it.
Yeah, and that's a barrier for a lot of these grants, because a lot of them you can use for infrastructure, but it's like the city or an EDC would have to be the main applicant. But there aren't a lot that aren't education focused that an ISD can apply for. Usually they'll be pretty limited. But yeah, there's also like USDA, I know they might have broader eligibility. They have community facilities grant, but that one's mostly a loan. You know, even though a portion of it can be forgiven. But yeah, there's some other things that we can look at outside of here, but yeah, that's something I think, like Cynthia mentioned, then we could attend city council meetings, even, you know, school board meetings or, you know, EDC meetings, and, you know, go around and let them know what we have to offer, that we can help ISDs and stuff, search for funding or apply for funding. Hopefully that'll, you know, bring some more partnerships to the fold. Anita?
Yeah, Anna has some thoughts to contribute.
Oh, sure.
To Cynthia's comment, something that would be helpful is for cities to get connected is if they attend the newly elected officials class. We have the next class on July 16th from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. It's a free class, and it's great for city administration and elected officials. It's a very popular class, so and you can attend it as many times as you want. So that's Tuesday. And then to the water stuff, EPA does have a technical assistance program for water planning, which it has a very simple form as far as, you know, federal forms go to fill out. And then a third unpopular thing that might consider is, I know Texas has very tiny school districts, which limits their funding. So I don't know if it would be, this is probably incredibly unpopular, but any kind of consolidation of school districts could probably help pool funding and reduce the administrative burden on the school districts. So that isn't, like, as far as pooling your resources and having more funding, that isn't a third probably unpopular, you know, option. Most states do county school districts so that they do have more funding for the actual schools and stuff. So that's probably unpopular here in Texas, but I just wanted to offer that as well.
Let's see. Yeah, that was one of the strategies here, the newly elected officials class. So yeah, that is kind of what we do for outreach. I do speak at that and talk a little bit about grant programs and loan programs that are out there to new officials around the region. So, you know, a lot of there are people that we haven't worked with before. Let's see, marketing materials. And James, do you remember where all we put the CITCOG and Key Tempo brochures that summarize our services? Where would those distribute to? Do you remember?
I don't know if you said that. You just have some available in your office.
Okay, then I think we'll look into if we're able to send those out, send those to chambers and cities, and, you know, EDCs, senior centers and whatever, because, you know, aging and housing are other departments as well. But we'll send those out as well. So really, I think that the circuit rider, the attending city council meetings, I think it's all stuff we're going to focus on moving forward and really improve our outreach. So are there any additional comments, suggestions, anything?
Really quick, I did notice that in the packet, the second bullet, provide technical support as needed to communities on subjects of planning, education, legal, et cetera. The legal.
Yeah, that's a wording in the strategy, but we can't offer legal advice.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
caught my attention.
Yeah. I'm actually not sure why they have that in the strategy, but yeah.
No.
Okay, moving on to agenda item number 8, update on regional broadband initiatives.
All right, Anna?
Yeah, there's not been, I mean, it's like stop and go, I feel like, with a lot of the broadband stuff. The last broadband local government roundtable meeting, they combined it with the industry meeting because the first Thursday in July, obviously it was 4th of July while we had to move this meeting. And then the state office did create the Tier E license. Well, they didn't create the Tier E license, the federal government, the National Telecommunications Administration, or the NTIA, they created the Tier E license program with their consultants. And you have to get that, like, as a city or a county or whatever agency you are, if you want to challenge the broadband coverage map for the state. So there is a link in that in the presentation. And then next slide, please. So additionally, the BDO did say they're going to submit an application for the state digital equity program. I believe there's also some other state funding, but none of our counties are eligible. They're focusing on specific counties that are rural areas that have limited internet access, but none of our counties made the list. And then on the BDO's website, there's also the Digital Opportunity Hub. So there's that too. And then the USDA also opened up additional broadband funding. They typically do that on a cyclical level.
Yeah, I wanted to add the Digital Opportunity Hub is basically where the state, the BED, is a big federal funding for broadband, and that's where all the states have to create like a digital equity plan or digital opportunity plan. So that's basically our state broadband plan. And if you go to the website, you can look up everything they did as far as outreach and involvement with stakeholders. There's also they have maps that go into detail on like broadband affordability and access, and then different broadband resources and stuff. So it's really a whole website for the plan. It's interactive. It's a good resource too if you want to really delve into broadband in the state.
Moving on to agenda item number 9 regarding federal and state legislative updates.
Yeah, so there has been a lot of legislation going on since we're not in the active legislation season for Texas. But I wanted to share a report that the Comptroller's Office released on military installations. So overall in Texas, they found that military installations contribute at least $151 billion to the state economy and supporting almost 250,000 jobs. But specifically for Fort Cavazos, I mean, you see the numbers there, like the total direct employment is about 60,000, and then direct and indirect is 173,000. So, I mean, if you look at the output of that, Fort Cavazos has a huge economic impact on the community, which isn't surprising, but these numbers are incredibly high. And then I also wanted to let y'all know that the Senate Natural Resources Committee is having a discussion on specifically hotel occupancy tax. They're looking at, they're getting feedback from public comment, but a variety of organizations that particularly impacts. and they're discussing current uses of the local hot revenue, and then whether like to expand what you can use that money for, and then changing maybe the reporting requirements for cities to the comptroller's office. So that was on June 13th. And so I'm not sure like what the timeline is as far as like changing any of that, if that would happen in the next legislative session, or what their plans are, if they do actually end up making any changes.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 10, staff update.
Okay, so just as far as our staff update, a few upcoming events. We have our second Leadership Central Texas class on June 20th. We had our first one on June 20th. Our next one is July 18th. So the first one covered local government and CEDS planning program. So, we had our local state representatives, elected and public official panel, and then a lot of different departments and divisions from the COG spoke, myself included, over DDCT. We have 12 class members in total. 2 of them are new staff members that we have attending as well. And our next class will be covering regional infrastructure and social services. We have the Veteran Entrepreneurial Summit coming up, the second one in Lampasas on July 23rd. So this one has a little bit of a different focus. It's covering marketing, branding, sales, certifications for veteran-owned businesses, as well as I believe, a panel of startup stories from entrepreneurs. And then, as we talked about, newly elected officials class on July 16th. So, we'll cover growth, planning, or using planning and zoning to address growth, economic development, city and county finances. We'll talk about CEDS services and then grant programs for local governments. Some other updates as far as grant management. So really the big new ones here is we're now working with the city of Lomita on the USDA community facilities application to try and purchase and renovate a property for a new facility that will house city hall and different city services. We're also kind of planning with the city of Rockdale on future applying for a public works grant to develop water infrastructure to feed a future industrial park. And then, there's one other that I can't remember right now off the top of my head. But as far as economic overview for Q2 of 24, the unemployment rate is 4.85%, a slight increase from 4.46% rate from last quarter. The labor force participation rate is 54.4%, so a little over half. Exports at a slight increase as well. Over the previous 5 years, really from 2018 to 2023, total jobs increase of 4.3% in our region, and that outpaced the national growth rate, which is actually 3.9%. A few notes on like our fastest growing industries. So the fastest growing industries right now in the region are construction, retail trade, and accommodation and food services. The fastest growing occupations are management, transportation, material moving, and healthcare practitioners in technical. And in 2022, there were 5,252 college graduates in the region. That actually shrunk 19% over the previous 4 years, so since 2018. And it looks like most of the graduates were actually associate's degrees and Bachelor of Nursing degrees. And that is it for the staff update. In the back of your packets, you have the grant opportunities. So a few notes on that, some important resources to look at. One of them is through the Texas Department of Agriculture. They have a rural economic development finance program. So for that, that's funding for any political subdivisions, cities, counties, special purpose districts, even EDCs. So it's just for general economic development or projects that help the agricultural industry. So you have to have a population under 50,000 if it's a county under 200,000. So loans up to $5 million for these projects, infrastructure, business recruitment, community development, even healthcare facilities. A grant that's open right now for July, the TDA one is open on an ongoing basis. There's also the LCRA. They have a community development partnership program. It's open twice a year, so right now it's open for July, so July 1st through 31st. It's a kind of a small program, only up grants up to 50,000, so no match, but for capital improvement projects in its service area, and the service area is Cordell, Mills, Hamilton, Passes, and San Saba. So some past projects they funded are, fire department renovation, emergency response centers, renovations on community centers, schools, libraries. There's a match of 20% for that. And let me see, there's a few others. For HUD, there's an FY 23 section 202 supportive housing for elderly program. So it's up to 20 million for nonprofits to support rental housing for very low income seniors, age 62 and older. The EPA, we have a water technical assistance program. So if you need technical assistance as far as planning for developing a water infrastructure and building capacity for drinking water, or if you have low water pressure, sewer and sewage backups, all that type of stuff, you can fund and develop plans through that. And then I believe lastly, we have the T-Mobile Hometown Grant. That's the very last one in the packet. So this one's kind of an ongoing quarterly grant. Each quarter, I think they fund 25 small towns for different community projects, which could be revitalizing historic structures, creating downtown assets, improving community spaces. So that's 25 million total over 5 years. So it's going to keep going every quarter. Local governments or nonprofits can apply. It's up to 50,000 as long as you have a shovel-ready project and you have a plan set up for it. It'll fund it. And that is it.
Okay, agenda item number 11, any comments? Okay,
One quick comment. We, in Bell County this year, across the county, we've seen appraisal values kind of come to a standstill. So typically, we either depend upon those appraisal reevaluations, or we depend upon new properties coming in for tax base. About a third of the new tax base that's coming to Bell County this year, which is more important now with the reappraisals not being as high, is coming from our solar farms that are coming into Bell County. So when you talk to people about solar farms and what impact that is or isn't having in the county, that's a big number. 1.2 million, 1.2 billion came on this year as new property and almost 400 million of that was solar farms, and they're just getting started. So that number is going to be probably the majority, unless something else larger comes in. New property value in Bell County at least.
Are you seeing a lot of that growth in East Bell County?
It's all in East Bell County. There's one proposed coming to West Bell County, but all of them so far in East Bell County. It's along the power lines.
Yeah, and the two legislative sessions, they got rid of the Chapter 313 agreements, 11 and 12, 13 agreements. So that's the last of those. And those are kind of sunsetting. And so I think you're probably seeing that around Oscar, between Zopterville and Rogers, that huge area there. But I think that the solar, the renewable energy stuff went away. And so,
well, the incentives in a way, but we've still got companies that's going to be.
Are they? Okay. The incentive went away for, I knew they went away for the ISDs, and I didn't know how much impact that was going to have on whether they were still going to be coming in and whether or not they were still going to be getting a tax abatement or not. And that,
in Bell County, we chose to do pilot agreements. It's still under the tax abatement rules, but it's really not an abatement. It just takes since any technology depreciates very rapidly, or can on the books, general accepted accounting procedures can be depreciated very rapidly. So if you don't have a pilot agreement basically just sets out for 10 years what that value is going to be. And instead of the developer who builds these paying all the taxes up front for the first 2 years before they sell them off to an electric company that takes over, we make the pilot agreement with the developer that gives us some capacity to put some restrictions on. So they got to rebuild roads that they tear up. They got to have buffer zones. We're trying to protect property owners' rights around them, that sort of thing. And they'll agree to that. if we give them an abatement, which basically just spreads that tax liability out over 10 years, instead of most of it being paid in the first 3 years. So it doesn't come out of the developer's pocket, it spreads it out over the electric company's pocket for a longer period of time. So we're not really giving anything away, we're helping the developer keep some of those costs down early on, force some concessions to them to keep things safe and appropriate.
In exchange for increased values and increased taxable value.
Well, for a level taxable value over 10 years, rather than it being very, very, very high the first year, 2 years.
Increase is sustainable over 10 years.
That's right. Okay. And that also helps your school district budget, the county budget, because we get the same amount of tax every year. Instead of this year we got a whole lot and we make our operating budget based on that, and the next year we got nothing, and you got to fill that gap.
So are y'all seeing it within, are you seeing it within your taxing entity, yourself and your taxing entity? That the Bell County ones are helping out, is that what you were saying?
Yeah, it's, like I said, it's a third of the new appraisal value that's come online.
Okay.
So when we talk about sustaining growth in the county or city, whatever the case may be, school districts, that new property coming on should hypothetically fund any growth that we have in our budget. So that you're not just taxing the people that are already here more to give them the same services they've always had. You want new properties coming on or change in use of the old properties like infills and cities and increasing the value. So that funds your growth rather than just asking everybody to pitch in more than you.
So quick question. So with these new agreements with, I guess, the county, not necessarily the city, unless they're in the ETJ.
No, they have to be in the city.
Okay, so that have to be within the city's jurisdiction. So we're talking within the first half mile or mile, and I guess their ETJ outside of the
It
city.
doesn't count. But the agreement has to be with the county if it's in an unincorporated area. If it's in a city, you don't have it yet, it has to be with the city.
Okay. Now, these agreements are over 10 years. They used to be over 30, I believe, 20 or 30 years.
We've
But
never done anything over 10 years.
so 10 years now, after 10 years, what happens to the solar equipment? Y'all know?
Well, typically they're replacing them within 10 years, and that's why we did a 10-year feasibility on that.
Okay.
So that in 10 years, we renegotiate this when we put new panels
And then it restarts, the 10 years restarts over?
in. If we agree again,
Okay. If not, then is it y'all's responsibility to dispose of all the solar equipment or?
well, there's nothing in the law that says anything about that right now.
Okay.
In the pilot agreement, we have them setting aside funds to dispose of it.
Okay.
So they're having to do that on their own, based on our agreement. Without that agreement, they wouldn't have to do anything.
So we reside in Bell, Williams, and Milam County. Just a hypothetical question here, just because I'm getting information. But if, let's say, there was an opportunity for something to come in one of those counties, it would be an agreement between the county, and then it would be, the agreement would reside between the county and then which other entity, the city, or the school, or the landowner?
Just the county.
So
The
the
pilot agreement for the taxing is just with the county because at least so far, all the solar farms have been in the county.
Okay.
If that solar farm was in a city, they'd have their own agreement.
It would originally be between the landowner selling the property or leasing the property and the solar farm.
I think the county is involved because the county is giving up a tax base.
Correct, correct.
So whoever is granting that incentive is who the agreement is with.
There's a separate rental agreement or land lease agreement between the owner of the property and the solar farm.
But those are the people working together for these agreements. You know, if somebody wanted one, they would reach out to the solar company, or the solar company would reach out to the landowner. They would have to work with the county to get it all worked out. Is that?
Owners have nothing to do with it.
Say that again?
Our pilot agreement is between the county and the solar company.
Okay.
There's no owner, there's no city, there's no other entity whatsoever. That's just the taxing entity. That's who the solar farm has to pay taxes to.
So who owns the land? It's the
The
solar.
owner's still on the land. So far, all of our solar companies have just leased the land from property.
Okay, but there are some, but it has to be, if somebody owns the property, that's what I was getting to. They have to agree to have it leased on their property.
Yes,
Okay. And is there a benefit for them, for the landowner?
a lot of money.
Okay. So they're still getting the additional revenue, okay, over a 10-year period of time.
Yes.
Well, it's gonna be dependent on what the property leases.
Yeah, but the ones we've seen here have been about $3,000 a month per acre.
Okay.
It's a lot.
It's a little more than hay.
It's a lot more.
So it's 3,000 a month per acre for 10 years.
Their lease agreements to the landowners, I believe, are 50 years with renewal. They're, are 20 years with renewals. I don't remember all of them, but I think it's a 20-year lease with up to 50 years worth of renewals.
Okay.
That's what I recall.
And so after 10, they can re-agree, after 10, they can re-agree, that kind of thing. And how many, just the minimum acreage that y'all are dealing with right now?
We have 5 in Bell County.
5, okay, but what's the minimum acreage they're looking for?
For instance, we have one that's 3,000 acres,
Okay.
but there's 12 landowners in that. So they negotiate each landowner. So it may not be the same lease. They're all going to negotiate whatever they want.
Okay.
But the largest one we got right now is 3,000 acres total.
Okay.
And Bobby, they're selecting the parcels based on the transmission line.
Yes.
Where they're
And when we right underneath that transmission line, because the farther out from that transmission line, the more major line they have to run, and that costs a lot.
How far out are they going from each towers? Going to the
They're right under them.
Just right under them,
Right under.
only right under them?
Well, I mean, the solar farm can be farther out, but their connection is right at that utility.
Okay. I just didn't know how far out they were gonna go from those towers. And are y'all putting sheep on them? Are y'all out there putting sheep on them?
I don't know what to do. They do have to manage, though. They have to keep the grass down.
It was sheep before, I think that's what I'm hearing, you're putting sheep out there, and
Yeah, they can.
they're not jumping, those sheep won't jump on the solar panels, and they'll eat all the grass. Good.
Let me jump in here a minute. This is Dexter Morris. So there's no agreement with the school district, just straight to the county?
The agreement with the county basically sets their tax appraisal value.
Right.
And that way that appraisal value doesn't change over 10 years, which does affect the school district.
It does.
The school district can have their own agreement with the power companies, but not all of our districts in our area have.
Yeah, the ability for school districts to work with these, with the solar companies is gone with the new Chapter 403 agreement that came out of House Bill 5. So that ability is gone, but the cool part is the increased revenues, because the school district will see the increased revenue, which allows them, increased values allows them to have more capacity for, to do things like a no tax increase bond election, like you see in so many different places, like Rogers is probably fixing to call about a $45 or $50 million bond, and the residents aren't gonna see a tax increase. The taxes will stay the same, and that's the kind of capacity that they're gonna get from their solar, their 313 agreement. And that's from that solar farm alone, that one farm that's there, they're fixing to get, some of it's through the old 313, and some of it's what you're talking about, where they're just adding on to it, but they're adding on to it in Rogers ISD's district. And so Rogers can go for a $50 million bond this year, and it's not gonna raise the taxes for the residents, and they're gonna get to have brand new facilities. And so, and renovate really old facilities that need to be renovated. And so that's the benefit, even though the 313s are gone. That's why I was asking those questions. If you were able to get something within your district somewhere where you have the transmission lines, as long as your community was up for it and they could all agree on it and it was something good, then as long as everybody was on board with it, it would definitely benefit a lot of people, and the kids in the communities. The community's got to be up for it.
Any other comments? Okay, moving on to, the next meeting is Thursday, October 3rd, 2024 at 9:30 a.m. And adjourn.